Hey, before we get started, I want to make an invitation, give you an invitation. Every week, I send out a newsletter. And in the newsletter, most of the time, every week, it's my blog post getting delivered to your inbox. So you don't have to go searching for it. And my newsletter is a mix. Yeah, I talk about calling and destiny, but I talk a lot about just life. I talk about leadership, my perspective on things, and I would love to just invite you, if you want to receive it, I'm going to send around the sign-up sheet. Does anybody now receive my newsletter? Do you think everyone should sign up to get it? Yeah, okay, I'm putting them on the spot. They're going, no, I never open it. You don't understand. Sorry to put you on the spot. But I will tell you, if you want, it's also me a little unfiltered, okay, which is mostly every day of my life now. Since I'm preaching in 2 weeks here, May 1, 2, and Penny is scared to death. She's literally scared. She doesn't know what I'm going to say. Neither do I. So you're already on the list, aren't you? Yeah. So could you pass that around for me? And if you want to receive the newsletter, you'll receive. Also, you'll get behind the scenes at Destiny Works, special offers from Destiny Works, announcements, pre-announcements on workshops. Soon, by the way, I'll be announcing 2 workshops. I'm going to be holding a virtual workshop on Zoom for people who are not ready to get out yet, or people around the world or around the country. So if you know someone who would like to receive this workshop in a condensed form, it's about 3 hours. It'll be 3 hours online, and I walk them through everything I'm walking you through. You can pass the word on to them. That virtual workshop is coming up probably in the next month or month and a half. And then I'm also going to try to do another live workshop, and I'll probably hold it at my office. There's a conference room there. But if you're on the newsletter, you get the information on that. So, all right, we are on the look or on the search for your destiny. I want to do a little review before we dive into personality. I know this is one of the hot topics. People love to talk about personality. But let me just remind you that you were built to count. As water is made to run downhill, you were placed in a specific context to count in ways that no one else does. That is your destiny. And like I said the first week, that's a powerful set of words that Dallas Willard put together in the idea that you were built to count, that somebody outside of you, hands formed you outside of you. We know that's God himself. That you were built to count, to matter, which why do I matter in the world? Well, yes, you do. And then you were built to matter in ways that no one else does. That's a huge statement. And then we end up with the coup de grace at the end, and this is your destiny. It's a word that really only shows up in myths and legends, and yet you have one too. And that's what we're trying to discover. And the way we're going to find it is at the intersection of 2 massive truths, okay? One of them is awesome, and one of them is awful. And the awesome truth, if you haven't heard me say this yet, you've probably heard me say this 36 times already, you are incredible. You're unique, you're a masterpiece. And there are 4 elements in your life that when we examine them carefully, point out just how unique and wonderful and powerful you are. Number 1 is your life story. No one has your life story. No one. Not even your siblings have your whole life story. Your personality. You have unique motivations and unique thought patterns and unique sin patterns, and you are unique in your personality. And then your skills or gifts or talents or spiritual gifts, some of them are innate, some are given by God, and some of them are learned over your lifetime. And then finally, your passions. Those things that beat within you when you look at the world. And I want to remind you again that we have all kinds of passions in our lives. I have a passion for, and I love dearly, musical theater. That is not my calling. It is not my calling. It is just a passion of mine that I enjoy. It is for me. It's an avocation. It's a hobby, okay? But a passion that looks outward to somebody else's need or the world's need, that's a calling. So, last week we began looking at your life story, and I'm going to review that for a minute. This week we're going to talk about personality, and next week we'll cover both skills and passion. And on the final week, we're going to, I'm going to walk you through the more mystical, how do we pull all of this together? How do we connect the dots to discover calling? It's not easy to do in a group this size, but it is something we're going to attempt to do. And in your small groups, you can help each other as well. We're trying to connect the dots. There's something in your life story that connects with something about your personality and your skills and your passion that points in a specific direction at the calling and the destiny on your life. And I want to remind you that all this is important because the world is broken. That's the awful truth. Injustice, isolation, hatred, pain, decay of the planet, and alienation of people from God and from norms. These are, did I forget one? These are the broken places of the world. And where they where these unique aspects of your life interact with the world and its brokenness, that's your calling. That's the holy grail, so to speak, that we're looking for as we are together in this workshop. Now, last week we talked about life story, and I want to get a little more practical and answer questions about life story questions. This that I'm putting up here is the actual calling quilt of a young woman who I coached. This actually, I think it was last week, I met with her. I've covered up her name here. And I want to point out some things about her life story in an illustrative way so you can compare them to yours. Her life story pretty much takes up everything down to here. Here's where we started talking about the Enneagram and her personality. So all of this up here was her life story. I'll point out a couple of things. She spent a lot of time talking about the influence of her dad on her life. Not so good and good, both a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. But the important thing is you can see, this is my writing because we did this over Zoom and I was writing as she was telling me her story. It's not that she just said, okay, my dad was an influence. She described to me the type of influence, how he shaped her. He's an open-minded perfectionist, loves the finer things in life. He's very ambitious and he's very cynical and very challenging and had a huge impact on her life and forced her. She thought she couldn't do anything except be successful because of her dad's influence. So that shaped her. She talked about her mother here and the influence that her mother had. Her mother is level-headed, prayerful, hardworking, spiritual. I mean, she's like, her mother is the diametric opposite of her father. And they both had profound impacts and shaped who they are, who she is. Here's a guy named Krishnamurti. He's an Indian education thought leader. He influenced her from afar by his writings, but had a powerful influence in the way she sees the world. So, and then Uncle Shaker, who is a man who is absolutely committed to helping the Himalayan people. He's like her. He's from a Nepalese background. But this man, Uncle Shaker, has lived with a calling as long as she can remember. And so she sees herself now, that part of her calling is to emulate her uncle. So these are the people. Then there were circumstances. Her time in her undergraduate work in psychology. What happened to her is less about the education, but about the relationship she formed, and had a profound impact on her. She began a career in marketing, and what she discovered was in this career in marketing, she, as a woman, a strong woman, with opinions and with skills, she was always shut down by the men above her. Shock, right? Surprise, right? But it has shaped how she views the world. So the reason why I'm telling you this is when you do your life story, it's not enough just to say, that happened to me, or that person influenced me. The key is, what did they do for you? How did they shape you? Even if it was a negative experience, what did it give birth to in you? So we spent a lot of time talking about this, and you can see I put little red dots at places that we went back and revisited as we worked through her calling. And she's still, we'll be meeting again in 3 weeks, and she's kind of drafting what she thinks her calling is, and we'll process it together. So now that I've told you that, what questions do you have about the life story part? Before we move on. Yes?
Is there a specific time, a specific person or age that you should start at, or just put everything down?
People do it two different ways. Some people, her first words out of her mouth was, I was born in India. So she went chronologically through her life. Other people would rather think topically. So they'll say, I'm like the guy I met with 2 days ago. 2 days ago. He went person. He listed all the people first, and then the circumstances, and he even broke it down to positive people, positive circumstances, negative circumstances. It's whatever works for you. That's a great question. What other questions do you have? Yes?
To that, the different age bands that you're remembering, which has the most influence? Like, if you look at your age, birth to age 10, versus your adult perception
Right.
of those things, which is more effective?
So the question is, which tends to have more of an influence, that which happened when you were young or that which happens as you're an adult? The answer is yes. All. It's not so much when it happened. It's not so much who did it. It is what did it do to me? We were just talking of just a few minutes ago about something that happened. How many years ago was that, just in general? That you. Oh, okay. But it was something very recent. But there are people, like she went back, this young lady, she was giving me memories of when she was 10 years old in the house filled with people and what the impact on her. So it's not when it was or what it was, it's how it influenced you. Does that help? Okay. These are really good questions. Other questions? Okay, I want to make sure we don't plow forward and you don't really grasp this. Yeah.
There's no such thing as being too heavy on one's. Oh, hi.
There's no such thing as what?
There's no such thing as being too heavy on something. So on mine, I'm struggling because I don't have a lot of childhood stuff that I'm thinking of. There's some big dramatic things, maybe 3 or 4 boxes full, but it's mostly, I feel like, after I got married. And it went like,
Yeah.
is that okay? It seems
Absolutely.
like I'm blocking stuff out or something, or should I stress about that, or well, not stress?
You know,
but dig in, like
I
what
know, I
happened
wouldn't-
to me, you know, like that kind of thing.
I wouldn't stress about it. If God brings it to your mind, that's what He wants you to remember. I'm sorry?
It's okay to be heavy on.
Absolutely. I've gone through this with people who almost every shaping experience happened before they turned 10. So there are, you can see people are nodding their heads. There are some people who have experienced profound shaping things in their younger ages. So it doesn't matter. It's you. Yes?
Yeah, so after we do this, and we answer those questions, the positive, negative,
Right.
and what they meant to us and how they shaped us,
Yeah.
etc. What's the purpose? What's the end state? What's the goal? Is it just a self-awareness exercise, or are you looking for something else?
I think overall it's always good to do a life mapping exercise. But what we're looking for, again, are the specific influences on your life that shape you now or shape your calling. or point to your calling. That's what we're looking for. I only picked out 3 or 4 things from her life story that I think pointed her in a direction of her calling. A lot of this stuff was either, well, that's interesting, or I'm sorry that happened to you. What we're looking for is the stuff that shaped you. And so let me ask a question. How many of you, by doing the life story part already have a suspicion of what your calling might be just from looking at your life story? Okay, a number of you already saw something that happened to you maybe has shaped how you approach the world. Anybody brave enough to tell us what it was? You don't have to, I'm just curious. Yeah?
Yes, I grew up in a racist house, and now I teach adults and children to speak English.
Oh, okay. You do ESL or yeah. So, but you grew up in a racist house. Yeah. Okay. And okay, pardon me for being blatantly obvious about that. Can you tell me how that influenced what you do now?
Because until when you taught about it at church,
Yeah.
and you took a guy through it on stage,
Right.
it kind of came clear to me then
Yeah.
that listening to my dad specifically talk when I wanted to have a friend over, and he said, "What would the neighbors think?" And to what I do now, and I'm literally driven by injustice, so I
Yeah.
think all that has to do with one another.
Yep. That's and watch now what happens when we talk about your personality and see how it informs how you go about it and your skill set. You see? So ultimately, to answer your question, when you find the thing that has shaped you, now we're going to see the parts of your personality and your skill set that tell you how to go about it, how you go about the process of your calling. I'll say it again. I said this last week. Life story and your passions tend to point to the what. This is my calling. Personality and skills tend to point to the how. This is how I go about it. And I'll show you how that works in a little fun illustration we'll do in a few moments.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So the what is my calling is largely, not totally, largely going to come out of your understanding of your life story and the passions that you have within you to change the world or people's lives. Your calling's going to emerge there. And I would even go so far as to say many of your passions come out of your life story. So those two shape the what. The personality and skills aspects of your life, those two elements, tend to tell you how you're going to go about it. For example, I'll just give you a little preview. Two completely opposite numbers on the Enneagram. Let's take a 4 and a 9. And if a 4 and a 9 share the same calling to do whatever, if they have the same calling, they're not going to go about that calling the same way. They're just not. Because that's how they're going to go about it is more in tune, more in line with how God made them, which we'll get into now. Any other questions about life story before we move on? Yeah.
Perhaps it's just a general comment, but I felt like I have a very clear sense of a pattern that came up on my life story, but
Yeah.
then I took the Enneagram, and then I got confused because I don't think my Enneagram matches. Like if I look at the fear, I'm like, that's not my fear, that's not what I'm afraid of, that's not. But then when I look at the motivation,
Yeah.
when I read the chapter,
Yeah.
yes, this describes me, but I don't think it's why I do what I do.
Okay. So I'm glad you said you're a 6 on the Enneagram.
No.
What are you?
It says I'm a 1. So then I go back and I took every free test, and
Okay.
every time I took the test, it kept coming back as a 1, and I'm like, dang.
Dang, I don't want to be a 1, right?
All right.
Yeah. So
But I don't think it matches the pattern
now watch.
of what showed up in my
I'm glad
life.
you said that. Let's do this. Let me come back to what you just said because it's really illustrative of something I'm going to say in just about 30 seconds. okay, that is really important when we talk about the Enneagram. The Enneagram, I have taken, like you have, I've taken all the personality tests that you can take. Most personality, and they're all good. I mean, they're wonderful, they're eye-opening, but most personality tests focus on what I call neutral you. I'm an extrovert, I'm an introvert. I'm intuitive, I'm sensory. It's more like you as the neutral description of your personality. The Enneagram's brilliance is the Enneagram helps you see you at your darkest and you at your brightest. And matter of fact, the Enneagram is known worldwide as a test, probably the most honest help you do the honest assessment of the dark side of your life, the unresourceful side of your life, the not walking in the spirit side. I think that's what you're maybe referencing. I think it's wonderful in that regard. Sometimes and Enneagram experts will look at your personality from what they call the healthy down to the unhealthy and the neutral in the middle. Some people say resourceful, unresourceful. Some people put a little more spiritual spin. They say walking in the Spirit, not walking in the Spirit. Now, for our purposes, the strength of the Enneagram of revealing the dark side of us doesn't help us discover how we're going to go about our calling. The bright and shiny aspects of your personality will show you. That's what relates to how you go about pursuing your calling. The dark side of who you are will shut down your calling. You may have a calling, but you operating in the unhealthy way that your number tends to operate will stop your calling from moving forward. Whereas the healthy aspects of your personality are like a catalyst for your calling. So back to your point. If you're a 1, there are some brilliant things about 1s. God made 1s to be, you might feel like there's a lot of self-recrimination in a 1. I can't match up to my own sense of being right. Because, let's face it, with a 1, there's only 2 colors in the world, black and white, right? There's only extremes for 1s. I'm married to a 1, so I know this. And I'm a 3, so the only color in the world is gray. I'm very flexible, and it gets me in trouble with my wife. And I also see her rigidity when she's in her black-white mode. But what I see about my wife is her attention to detail and her hosting, the way she pulls people in and gives of herself to somebody with a high justice quotient. She has a high justice quotient. It makes her brilliant. And so what I would say is, let's set aside the dark, unresourceful aspects of who you are. And let's just look at the bright, shiny, God-given power of 1 and see if that has a better intersect with your life story. That's a long answer to your question. Does that make sense, what I just said?
It does make sense. I just don't see how the
Okay.
two fit together.
Okay.
But
Let's let it.
let them marinate.
All right, with this crowd, let's just have some fun. Where are all the 1s in the room? Hey, good to see you. How about the 2s? You want to hug everybody, right? 3s like me? Yeah, if you're a woman and you're a 3 in our world, some people go, wait a minute. But 3s get things done. Right? We get things done. 4s in the room, there's no one like you. No one like you. You are the most unique person in the world.
We are now, aren't we?
How many 5s? Yeah, because you're just sitting there thinking the whole time. You are in your head the whole time, and right? The 6s, you're a little bit nervous, wondering. You are the quality control agents of our world. and you're, at your worst, you'll worry everybody out the back door, but at your best, you can point out something that could go wrong before anyone else sees it. That's what a 6 does. 7, who wants to party? 7s want to party. How many hobbies have you had? Probably more than you can count, right? Barry's a 7, so when he gets all worked up about farm stuff, you understand that's coming from his 7-ness, okay? 8s, any 8s? Like 3s, when a woman is a 3 or an 8, which is that it's the strong leader, I am sure you've probably had to deal with that in your life at times. And I commend you. I did this with a woman who works for the U.S. Department of Education. She is a strong 8. And when she read about her, there were tears. She understood. And she said, now I understand why people misunderstand me. And because she's very powerful. She's very strong. And then the 9s, who are all, you're reading the room. How are we all feeling right now? The 9s, you're concerned about how we're all getting along and the peaceful nature of this room. Okay, let's talk about, Albert Einstein said the really valuable thing, if you want to open up to that page on your personality, the next session, the really valuable thing in the pageant of human life seems to me to be the creative individual, the personality. It alone creates the noble and the sublime. And by the way, like I said, it also can create the ugly and the difficult when you are unresourceful. All right. So, what are the healthy characteristics of your personality types? I'm going to do this really quick. The ones in the room, tell me what's the healthy characteristics of a 1. Just shout out some words. Detailed. All right. Give me another one. I'm sorry? High expectations. Okay. And 1s can hold everyone to that same set of high expectations. 2s in the room. What's the strength of the 2s? Helping. It's a key word for a 2 is helping. What else? Compassion. Okay. The 3s in the room. I already told you about 3s, but what is it about 3s?
They motivate people to get things done.
That's right. They motivate to get things done. I always call 3s the people who say, if you're at A and you need to get to B, I'll get you there. That's what 3s do. 4s, what's the strength of a 4? I think there were 2 4s in the room. What's the strengths of the 4?
They want everybody to be authentic besides themselves.
Yeah, that's really important. Authenticity is really important. So in small groups, 4s are the ones who draw other people out and their authenticity. Also, 4s are highly creative. They have creative, all their bones are creative. 5s, what's the strength of the 5s? Analytical? I'm sorry? Insightful. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, with the mask, it's really hard. And I'm losing my hearing too, on top of all that. And the 5s are the people that you want in the room that when you're done with the conversation, they have to have the last word because they have thought it through so much the whole time and Tim Ayers is a 5, okay? So we've had meetings where we'd be going through the meeting and we come to the end and Tim will go something. I'll say, why didn't you say that 30 minutes ago? Because 5s process so deeply. 6s, what's the strength of the 6? I kind of implied this earlier. Quality control, huge to a 6. What else? Plan ahead, absolutely. You're the planners. Also probably the most loyal of all the numbers. 7s, what's your strength, Linda? Joyful. Optimistic, absolutely. And I'm sorry? Absolutely. 7s are fun friends. What are we going to do today? 8s, what's the strength of the 8? What's your strength? Fearless is really important, and there is a courage. 8s have courage that is infectious to other people. and other people are struggling will follow an 8 who is a resourceful 8 you have to have in your life because things will get done. They'll just get done. 9s, strength of the 9? Peacemaking, absolutely top of the list of the 9. They're the ones that create peace. So, here's what I want you to do. I want on here, this young lady was a 4 with a 3 wing, by the way. We didn't talk about the wings, but the wings tend to modify your number. So, for instance, she's a 4, which makes her highly, deeply emotional. That's one of the other things about the 4. Deeply emotional people. But because she's a 3, she's also effective and she can get things done. It makes for an interesting mix. A 4 with a 3 wing is an interesting mix. I'm a 3 with a 4 wing. So the way the 4 influences me is a typical 3 doesn't know their emotions. The typical 4, that's all they know is their emotions. And so I tend to be a little more emotional than the average 3 because I have this 4 wing that's influencing me. So I'm going to stop. What is your wing? And go ahead and on your calling quilt, you can. What I like to do on the personality patches is write your number at the top of the patch, and then write some of the characteristics of your number. Like for her, I put creative, empathetic, curious. Empathy, by the way, is another thing for 4s. Patient, idealistic, self-aware, inspirational. These are aspects of her personality. You go ahead and transfer what you know about yourself onto your blank calling quilt. Probably would take 2, 3, or 4 patches to fill. And while you're doing that, I'm opening the floor to questions about Enneagram and personality and how it affects calling.
Does it change over time? Because when I was doing it, I thought, well, 20 years ago, I probably would have answered that just a little bit
Yeah.
differently. But now that I'm almost retired, it's like, it's not as.
So here's my caveat. I'm not an Enneagram expert, okay? But I do believe that personality can change. Circumstances can change your personality over time or modify your personality over time. When I started in ministry, I think I was a 7. My wife would tell you I was a 7. I was lampshade on the head guy. It was fun all the time. When I became senior pastor, by the way, I'm equal 8 and 3. 8 and 3. And all of a sudden, things got real for me. And so my personality shifted to a more demonstrative, more aggressive personality rather than the fun. So I think that happens. That's a good question. Other questions about personality? Yes?
Well, and I noticed that my 9 was 87, but my 2 was 82.
Yes.
So they were so close, but so very
Right. And
randomly different.
yeah, but what was your wing? 1 or 8? Okay. So the interesting thing, so the 8 is influencing that you're a more direct 9. But the 2, because you're so strong in 2, it's interesting, a mix of a 9 and 2, because 9 has the sense of all of us, and 2s have the sense of you, the right person right in front of you. You're probably the consummate relational person. There is no one in the world that wouldn't walk up to you and just start talking to you out of left field, because you have this thing, this aura about you that people, right? There's no strangers to you. That's a 9 with a strong 2. And I would guess that where your calling is heading has something to do with your impact on individuals or teams or groups. Right? You can see, you know that.
I kind of pretty much already figured it out just by
Yeah.
falling into it,
Yeah.
but it totally feels right.
Yep. Absolutely. Good. More. Yes.
Can you explain again the difference between resourceful versus less resourceful?
Let me try to find other terms. Walking in the Spirit, not walking in the Spirit. Sinful, righteous living, or help me out. What are other terms to describe resourceful, unresourceful? I'm sorry?
Growth and stress.
Yeah, growth and stress. And how about this? Good and bad. So I'll come clean. The bad thing about a 3 is that because we tend to be gray, we can be morally suspect, because when we're at our worst, we will blend into we become manipulative just by being who we need to be in the moment to make you impressed. That's an ugly, ugly, ugly thing for 3s. That will kill my calling, right? Other questions about personality?
So when looking at the results chart, the wing,
Mm-hmm.
I would think it would be the second highest number, but it's not.
No, most of the time it's not. And this is where it gets, when we're getting to the guts of the Enneagram, this is in the place where I don't understand. But the way the test is formulated, even the way that they outlined the style of people and put, why is the 3 between the 2 and the 4? Why is the 8 between the 9 and the 7? That's a person like David Bell would probably take that apart and explain it to us. I don't understand it. Look at it this way. I think for some reason, the wings influence your prime personality. Even though there's another, what's your other strong number?
A wing or my strong?
Your other strong number. Like you were strongest in 1, but what was another one? Anything above 80?
Yeah, a 6.
6? All right, that tells me a lot. A 1 and a 6, that tells me how you view the world with for example, you know what right is. You have high integrity, and you also can see the future in a way to know when that's going to be threatened for you or somebody else. You are like the ultimate quality control. You're the kind of person that keeps everybody moving in the right direction. That's how those two influence each other. Strong integrity, those two numbers. Other questions?
Are we going to go through the unhealthy for each one?
I'm not going to do unhealthy. If you want it, that's why this book is brilliant. The emphasis on the book is helping you see the unhealthy part of who you are more than the healthy. I'm trying to help you see the healthy part of who you are, because that helps determine how you're going to go about your calling. Okay? What number are you?
A 2.
A 2. Okay, so as much as you love people and you're compassionate, you can get really wrapped up in them, and your own being depends on them needing you. That's when you're at your worst. And that will shut down a calling. Like if you start to become clingy with the people that you're loving, then your calling is going to be shut down. So that's an example of how unhealthy 2s can move into the world. But when you're healthy, who doesn't want you in their life? Everybody wants you in their life. Does that help?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Dave, if you'll look up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you take this test, it seems to me, not in this kind of group, but in the rest of the world,
Yeah.
people poo-poo it all the time. They're like, oh, you know, you can take that test 6 or 7 times and you'd have a different style and all of that. I don't even really know what my question is, other than why is that? Why do you feel like people are poo-pooing it?
There are some people who believe that there are nefarious roots to it. I don't buy that at all. Some people think it comes satanic, which I think is goofy. I've seen it change the life of people and launch people into the world to change the world in Jesus' name. So I have a really hard time. So that's one reason. The second reason, there are people, and I've worked with people that when I tell them, for me to work with you, I want you to take the Enneagram. They'll go, oh, come on. Another personality test. They just don't. I don't know what the reason is. Some of them are afraid of self-revelation. They're afraid of being known. They're afraid, maybe their self-recrimination is so strong they don't need any more. So there are reasons why people say no to this kind of thing.
Right. It's the reason I asked the question is more about the educational aspect of
Right.
what's my comment back when I've got somebody going, why would you ever do that?
It's been effective for a long, long, long time in helping people. And to be honest with you, let's talk the unhealthy thing. The Enneagram, when you know what your proclivities are, what you tend to be when you're unresourceful, then you see them when they're coming. Or you have a sense of, what could go wrong. And I mean, it's almost like accountability. And when you're in a relationship with somebody in your life and you know this about each other, my son-in-law, you wouldn't mind if I told you this, my son-in-law is a 6. And so for him, I want him to plan everything because he's thinking ahead. But at the same time, I don't want him to worry so much. And so we have an open dialogue about that because we know that. Like my wife knows that I can be too gray for her liking, and so she holds me accountable to integrity. I've said this many times. This church has no idea what a wonderful person my wife is to keep me on the rails. That's her job. She kept me on the rails, and I say that it's a brilliant thing to have somebody who understands you and will love you as you are. That really went heavy for a second there. Sorry about that. All right, let's play a game. Let's just say that a 1, a 5, a 6, and an 8 are 4 dear friends. A 1, a 5, a 6, and 8. And lo and behold, they're having coffee one day and they decide they're passionate about the same thing. They are really, really concerned about senior adults who are lonely. And they start telling stories. Yeah, it bothers me when I see seniors who don't have anybody relating to them. And it bothers me when I understand that some of them die alone. And it bothers me that there are some seniors in our county that aren't getting enough food because they're afraid to go out. And so they're looking at each other. You're concerned? Yeah, that. And they realize that part of the nudge on their life, the call on their life, is to do something about the isolation of senior adults. And they're going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about it? I'm sorry?
It'll be done by next week.
Because of who? Yeah, okay. So now this is how the game works. So they're sitting around, and the 8, the 1, and what did I say? 5 and 6. 8, 1, 5, and 6 all decide they're going to throw their weight into this. Tell me what happens. Who's going to do what? 8 we'll say it nicely, leads the group. And I know you want to go right to takes control of the group, but the 8 will lead it and probably make sure it happens. What's the 1 going to do? Yeah, you're going to do the research. You're going to know what, okay, you're going to say to the group, the 1's going to say, look, let's talk about what this means. And let me do the research on this, and here's what I found. And we're going to do it right. What's the 5 going to do?
They're going to analyze everything and draw the data. If there are any other programs out there like this.
Yeah, the 5 is going to have the data. The 5 will have thought it out, and combined with the 6, what's the 6 going to do? I'm sorry, what? The 6 is going to say, all right, before we jump into this, let's take stock. And this is how a team works. This is why I say that 4 people, 70 people can have the same call on their life, the same passion of their life, but approach it, do it very differently. And this is why if you have found yourself responding to a need, and let's say it's something that tugs on your heart, and let's say there's a ministry that touches you at a deep way, and you want to be involved because you have been concerned about what this ministry is all about, and then they ask you to do something for that ministry that is not in line with how you see the world. For example, let's say you're going to work with homeless, with Outreach Inc. down in downtown Indianapolis with homeless teenagers, and you're a 2. And they come in and they say, what we need you to do is we need you to oversee all the volunteers and come up with a system to manage the volunteers. How long will you last at Outreach Inc.? Not very long. Why did you want to get involved with Outreach Inc. if you're a 2? I want to be with the kids. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is why it's important for you when you're asked to do something, and it actually shuts down so many callings when you're asked to do something that's not, it's not in your lane, but it might be the right passion, wrong style. Does this help? Okay. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up. So, yes, somebody have a question? Any questions? It's fun when it all comes together because we're going to add your skills into it and your passions. And you'll see me on video next week. I'm sorry, I'm going to be out of town. But on the last week, we're going to come together and we're going to try to pull this together and see if a calling emerges, and maybe even with a game plan. Okay? Vaya con Dios. Welcome.